All right, friends, welcome back to the Blessed Family Podcast. As always, we count it an honor and privilege to be speaking into your lives just a little bit. Want you to be encouraged and to know that God is really good and His ways are perfect. And this is a time to be optimistic. This is a time to, we are here for such a time as this, and it's an exciting time to be alive. We have weapons that demolish strongholds. The church is growing, and even though, of course, there's hardship, there always is in this fallen world, we have the victory in Christ, and we have the answers in Christ, in His Word. And let's see, family's doing well here in Central Texas. God is good. We've got a family camp coming up in November. We're going to have the registration available any day now with a potential schedule. We have about 230, 240 people come out the last 2 years for that. It's in East Texas. It's a blast. November's a great time to come to Texas. And it's either in November or it might be in October this year. This is how much I know because Mrs. Dodd is the one that puts it together, which I'm very thankful for because that's one of her many gifts. All right, friends, well, let's jump into today's topic. Oops, I'm on the wrong one. Let me zoom up here. Here we go. Should my teenager have a social media account? That is the topic. That is the question on the table today. Should my teenager have a social media account? And the answer is no. Thank you for tuning in today. We'll see you next time. Just joking, but not really. So I personally am at a place, and this is always changing. We're always learning more and getting different perspectives on things like this. But I'm at a place where I believe that social media, so that's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, can certainly be tools for Christian learning. I'd say especially YouTube, right? Because you can, many of you might be watching this on YouTube, and I would say that God in His providence used some resources on YouTube to get Trump in office, which in turn, through him keeping promises that he made to us, was the overthrow of Roe v. Wade, which who would have ever thought that would have happened, right? So social media does have its place. That being said, they're tools. Social media is supposed to be a tool, right? And, it might be a tool for sharing your beliefs. It might be a tool for educating people. It might be a tool which it is a tool for the left, but it can also be a tool for God's people. And for some people, it's merely keeping in touch with people, which is great. Nothing wrong with that. But it is a tool, and just like any tool, there needs to be instructions and warnings attached to the tool, okay? People are losing hands and eyes, metaphorically. And they're losing hearts and they're losing brains because of social media. Now, we need to be careful. And I think we're all like this. Our knee-jerk reaction is to throw out the baby with the bathwater. We don't want to do that. Neither do we want to conform, but we want to realize, okay, this is something that is here. How can we harness it for the glory of God's kingdom? And I believe we can. So, but that being said, the question is, okay, if this can be a tool for God's kingdom, what about my 15-year-old son or daughter? Well, I'm going to give you my opinion. And I have it here, and what do I have? I have 5 principles / ideas / maybe facts. We'll see what you think. All right, first one, number 1, many, if not most adults don't handle social media correctly or well. Is that fair? That shouldn't be hard to convince us of, right? Next time you're in a waiting room for your, dentist, look around and you'll see lots of moms and dads, but mom's usually the ones taking the kids to the appointment. But you'll see them glued to a phone and they're doing this. They're just scrolling, and very often, look, they say that the average that Americans on average spend 2 hours a day on social media, 2 to 2.5 hours a day on social media. That is 10% of your life, okay? 24 hours in a day, 2.5 hours, you do the math, especially with the wake time. You've heard me talk on this before, but it's a big deal. Like people, hey, listen, if you want to save 6 years of your life over the next 40, get rid of social media. Now, once again, I'm not saying you necessarily should. I'm not saying the teaching today is not social media bad. That's not the teaching. The teaching is it's a tool, but many people don't use it well, and some people who use it probably shouldn't. And so if that's the case, if you would agree that adults very often cannot use it well, then why in the world should we put it in the hands of our children? Maybe that's not a good idea. So that's idea number one. Many adults abuse these things. They don't do it well. They become consumed by it. So why would you put it into a teenager's hands? Number two, teenagers or teenage years are so formative, right? I mean, they're so moldable. They're so pliable that plugging into the matrix of social media might not be a good idea, a risky idea. Just as pornography changes the brain, I personally suspect that social media can do the same thing, especially for our daughters, but also for our sons. Okay. Very often, to use social media responsibly, you have to have two things. You have to not fear men. You have to be okay with people disagreeing with you. And secondly, you have to be a truth seeker versus just an opinion maker. And this is where Proverbs 18:2 is very handy. It says, "A fool takes no delight in the truth, but only in airing or expressing his own opinions." And this is that is the social media verse, right? Everyone's an expert now. We can all just share our opinions and not learn. Social media, YouTube, for example, can be a great place to learn. Wonderful place to learn, right? You can plug into some great teachers. I just forwarded a friend of mine, about 2 weeks ago, a sermon on YouTube by Charles Spurgeon, where someone takes Charles Spurgeon's sermons and preaches them. Obviously, we don't have, not that I know of, audio of Charles Spurgeon preaching, but we can listen to people preach his sermons. Well, guess what? That's good. That's a good tool. But for a son or daughter to have a Facebook account, Instagram, TikTok, which I'm not very familiar with, but for some reason I just have very bad vibes about, they're so moldable, so pliable, it might not be good timing. It might not be the best time, right? You still want to keep them in the greenhouse a little bit and let their roots go deeper before you put them out into the storm. Number three, we need to prepare our children and train them up in such things, right? So you're like, hey, Jared, okay, you're saying my kids shouldn't have social media as a teenager, but you're saying maybe they'll have it as an adult. Well, shouldn't I be the one training them up? Well, yes, absolutely. Great point. So they should learn from you. You should teach them things, and you should also show them. They should observe you. So, for example, practically, show them the documentary Captivated. Okay? Captivated documentary. I think it was produced by, I want to say Colin Gunn. That might be his name. And he also did the documentaries like Indoctrination, which was really good. But show them that. Share with them all the stories, all the facts, all the statistics about what social media does to people. For instance, tell them that people who are consumed on social media are more likely to be depressed. They're more likely to get divorced. I mean, these are statistics that are pretty dang self-evident, right? That social media can cause some problems. So teach them. They don't have to. Look, you can teach your kids that drugs are bad without them having to experiment with drugs, right? So, I teach my kids that I teach my children that drugs are bad, but that doesn't mean they have to use to figure it out. In the same way I can teach them, I can caution them and educate them about the challenges of social media. That's step one. And then give them an example. So if you do social media, if you don't, great. I'm not telling you you should. But if you do, let them see you do it well. Don't let it consume you. Set the standard. Okay, this is just smartphone use in general, right? If you as a parent are glued to your phone, then you're setting an example that will likely ruin your child. And you're going to be sitting there, which I don't know what's going to replace a smartphone, smart goggles, who knows, but you're going to be a couple of decades from now looking at your grandchildren getting neglected. And maybe you'll realize that you were one of the ones that set that standard. So you sit down as a family, you watch something on YouTube, and you set limits, and you say, this is why we set limits. And you get your children to a spot where you're like, hey, are you going to set limits? And they're like, absolutely. I'm not going to have my kids, your grandkids, sucked into this stuff. No, I'm going to use this well as a tool. You know, going back to drugs, this is just off the cuff, but morphine's a tool, but it can be abused and become a drug, right? So social media is a tool. When abused, it does great damage, but when used well, it can do great things for the glory of God. So, just to review, most adults can't handle it well. Kind of silly to throw it into the hands of our teenagers. Also, they're so pliable. Instead of letting them on their own navigate social media, do it as a family and read books together. Read books. Watch good films, listen to audios, go on adventures, get in the outdoors, go hiking, canoeing, whatever it is. Number 4, almost done. Don't assume that your children as adults are going to do social media. You don't need to be like, okay, hey, you're 18 now, it's time to start your account. So my 2 oldest boys, well, my oldest son has a Facebook account, I think Instagram, but maybe he decided to cut that out. But very rarely on it. My second one, he's one of those guys where if you see his account pop up as a friend suggestion, it doesn't even have a picture. It just has the little gray cut out of a person's head because he just got it to do some, what's that called? Facebook Marketplace, right? So never was I like, okay, hey, you're an adult now. Let's plug into this. No, let them do it if they want to. And if they do, you know, like for instance, I would encourage a young man or woman, I'd say, hey, wait until you're 20. I mean, there's even a big difference between your perspective in 18 and 20 because you grow up, you start a family, you work, and you don't have the time to you don't have as much time to waste. Well, actually you do. You still have the same amount of time to waste, but you're spending it wisely. You've grown up. There's a big difference between 18 and 20, for example. So, just don't assume they're going to do it. Just let them figure it out once they leave home. And lastly, kind of a conclusion, my personal advice as of today is to educate your children, right? Like I said, you need to talk about social media. You need to talk about internet and all this stuff, the good, the bad, and the ugly. At some point in their upbringing, you need to educate them about this. Something just popped in my head. You also need to educate them, well, another podcast, sorry. You're just going to have to be curious. So educate them, then set a good example for them as an individual and as a family. And my personal opinion, I wouldn't let them just jump in. If my 16-year-old came to me saying, hey, I want to start an Instagram account, I'd say no. And if you do this right by the grace of God, I mean, none of us do anything perfectly, but if you do it right, your children will be so informed and have a good example that they'll see acquaintances and friends glued to their devices, and they'll recognize that's wrong. Okay, that's why mom and dad said, okay, I'm getting this. See, the goal is not to be a dictator with your teenager. No, you can be a dictator with your toddlers and your young children, but once your kids are a teenager, they're young men and women, and you need to back off to a certain degree. Excuse me. And the goal is to get them to a spot where they're on your team. Where if someone said, why don't you encourage your teenager to have a social media account? You can look at your teenager and say, why don't you answer? And they'll go, well, yeah, this is why. Because it's just not a good idea. It's not a good idea. At my stage in life, why would I do that? It consumes people my age. It very often leads them down paths that aren't good. Nah, I'm not going to do that. Encourage them to wait until they're older, if at all. And then if on their own they choose to take that step, then you have to trust God. And you have to trust that as Christian adults, they'll be wise. So when I found out that my firstborn, who's up in college right now in Idaho, that he got a social media account, I didn't freak out. I didn't say, what are you doing? I said, all right, God, he's doing this. He's an adult. I trained him. He's in your hands. I pray that he acts wisely. Right? You have to trust God ultimately. We do our duty. The results are up to God. All right, friends. So I hope this is helpful. Oh, well, something I just thought of that I didn't when I was preparing this. What do you do if your teenager already has a social media account? Well, let me just answer this on the fly. Thanks for asking. Let's say your 16-year-old, 15-year-old, whatever age, has an account. I would definitely have the conversations with them. I would still educate them, and I would ask them questions about how it's going. If I allowed one of my kids to do this and then later realize these things are like, ooh, ouch, and I see it abusing them, like I see them abusing it, and I see that it's not healthy, it might be a spot to say, especially if they're 15, 16, to say, hey, you know what? We're going to revisit this when you're older. Let's just cut this out. And hopefully you have their heart enough where they're like, yeah, okay, I get it. And there might be some frustration, but, have fun with them. Go out for ice cream and a movie, have fun with them. And hopefully they'll get over it and see the wisdom in it. But if your kid's 18 and they're basically an adult, and it's not something that's consuming them, I would just talk to them. And if it is consuming them, I doubt I would say to my 18-year-old, you're getting off of this. I mean, it would have to be really bad because I want to treat them like an adult at 18, even if they're still in my house. And I do have the authority to say, you aren't going to do this anymore, but I would rather have them come to that conclusion and talk to them and say, hey, man, hey, sister, I really want to encourage you to pray about this because this is what I see. And here's what's going on. And this is chemically has, properties of addiction involved in it. And try to get them to come to the place where they say, okay, I'm going to cut back or I'm just going to stop. Show them that documentary Captivating. No, I think it's Captivated. And may God give you success. Well, friends, as always, thank you so much for your time. Blessings to each of you, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.